Alright guys, if you saw my last video, Saved by the Bell, it's when I managed to win a game because it's on an absolute time limit with no increment that I really should have lost. I was completely losing and the clock saved me. Here's another great example, just that I played this morning, and this is a fantastic example of how not to play against the French defence. If you're an e4 player as white, pay attention to this. Right, so in this game I get quite an early advantage. Okay, so we've got the French, e4, e6, d4, very common, and I play d5. Okay, and then we have the advanced variation with e5. Okay, so now c5, I'm now contesting for the d4 central pawn. And a lot of responses to this. This is very common, particularly at the lower levels, is just to play c3. So if c takes d4, c takes d4, and white hasn't lost the central pawn. Makes perfect sense. Okay. So now I bring out my knight, adding a second attacker to d4, and white brings out his knight to f3, adding a third defender. So he's got pawn and queen and knight. And now, very common move, queen b6. So this is a third attacker, right? So we're just piling up the pressure. Each turn, we're trying to add more. So at this point in time, if white should ever play bishop or knight to d2 or d3, then that actually blocks off the queen. So you can then go ahead and win a pawn, basically. So that's kind of what you're waiting for. So at this point, white plays bishop e2, preparing to castle, and now I play the second major pawn push in the French, the f6 pawn push, and white bites. Okay. Now, if you don't, I think that this is kind of a theme here. So look at the board how it is now, right? White's ready to castle, it's got two pieces out on the board. Okay. Black's got two pieces out of the board, of which one is a queen, and is not ready to castle. White definitely has the advantage here, okay? Now, if you're not sure what to do, generally leave the tension. I mean, it might be better here to allow black to capture on there, and maybe recapture with a knight, and if knight takes, take back with the pawn, right? Generally, what you'll see at higher levels is players being more comfortable keeping the tension there, because you very often get a situation where there's a face-off, but whoever initiates it, there's this old story of two samurai warriors who meet on a bridge and they both draw their swords and they stand there for, I don't know, days, right? Because they know that they recognize that each other is so skilled that the first one who flinches is going to get cut down. Okay, and it's a bit like that. It's like very often you'll have a situation where there's tension, but the one who initiates the exchange is going to come out worse from it, right? And so master level players will recognize that and will just leave the tension there. Beginners very often don't do that. So here white blinks and captures on here, which is exactly what I want, because now knight takes f6, okay? So now I'm getting ready to move my bishop, castle my king, and I've got a rook on the semi-open f-file, right? Pointing up towards the king side, okay? But look now. Now black has three pieces out on the board and white has two pieces out on the board, okay? And now he blinks again. White captures on d5. So he's just captured with both of his central pawns towards the outside, right? Which is not ideal. And look now, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces out on the board compared to 2. Okay? And it gets worse. Knight to a3. Hard to tell what the point of this move is. But white should probably have castled here, because I now have bishop takes f2. Okay? And there's nothing for it. The king has to move. Okay? So now I castle, putting my rook in line with white's king. And now the knight comes into b5, I simply retreat my bishop. Okay, just getting it out of line. I could end up with pinning this knight if my other knight moves. Okay, so I'm extremely dominant now. Okay, so knight moves forward and I decide to push the pawn. Okay, so if you look at the pawn structure here, we have a 3 and a 2, on white side of the board, and I have 3 pairs. Okay, so one of the imbalances in my favour is I'm the only one with central pawns, because white blinked twice and captured outwards with his central pawns. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, king's in the middle, I have central pawns, white does not have central pawns, push the central pawns. So I try and open up the middle of the board, do it like that. So we have an exchange of knights, and I capture inwards with my b pawn. I drop a pawn there because he's removed the defender of the e5 pawn. But you know what? I mean, dropping a pawn in the middle of the board when your opponent's king is exposed, not necessarily such a bad thing. So now I come and pin the knight. Well, it's kind of a pin. And now I'm really kind of swarming in on white's king. Now, at this point, the engine says black is very, very dominant. I am in a winning position. And of course, I am in a winning position here. Okay. Now, I now make the mistake of starting to think to myself, it's a very common thought. I think, wow, this is going to make a good video, right? For YouTube. My viewers will love this video of how not to play against the French. And I started to get something that you should very much avoid in chess. Happy. Started getting happy. Started enjoying myself. Yeah. Right. Always a bad sign. Always a bad thing, right? White now plays queen d4. So white is doing exactly the right thing here, okay? They're on the ropes, okay? They've got, if you look at the situation from white's perspective, material is actually equal. White's biggest problem is the h rook. The fact that he's had to move his king, king's exposed, there's no pawns on any of these files here for white, right? And so what white needs to do is to try and simplify to a situation where the equal material is what's basically left. Okay, so if white can just get the queens off the board, trade a couple of pieces, then we're in a situation where he's got a 3 and a 2 of pawns against 3 pairs. Oh well, actually, material is totally equal. Okay, so I would say blink, right? It crossed my mind. I was thinking what I should probably do here is move my queen. But I've really only got one good square, I think. I could actually retreat it to here. That might have been good. Get the rook behind it. I think probably, yeah, keep her on the e file. Yeah, that bishop's safe. But I blinked here. I blinked. I thought, look, I've got this game. I'm all over white. Now, you can never think that, because look what happens as the game simplifies, right? Knight comes in to attack. Okay, still looking good for black. Rook comes in, attacks a pawn. I give check. I give check again. I grab the knight off. I grab the bishop off. And now look at the situation, okay? White has 2 pawns and 3 completely isolated pawns, right? I have 2 pairs and a singleton, right? So I'm still actually in front, okay? So we have centralized rooks. I now engage my king, because what I don't want is I don't want this rook to come in here attacking this pawn, okay? So if here, could have rook takes, and then rook takes pawn. That's no good, right? I could have played my rook to f7, I think. That would have been okay as well. But I decide king f7. Guard the open file. Very common theme. Teach this a lot in lessons. Okay, engage your king, guard these squares from an infiltrating rook. Okay, so rook comes in, I push my king up. Perfectly comfortable at this point, still happy. Attack this pawn. Now I attack the rook. We exchange rooks, okay? Still happy. It's all good. White is going to have a job protecting 3 pawns that cannot be defended by other pawns because they're isolated, right? So yeah, a rook might say, let's say rook to here might be able to defend a couple of pawns, but then he's got these pawns, right? He's got a job on his hands. King comes in, start pushing pawns. It's getting tense, right? Drop my rook back, defend that pawn. Rook comes here. Rook to a6 now defends both pawns. Okay. Black is in a winning position actually here. We have a4, king pushes again, very important. Push the pawn, trade off pawns. And now, you know, white is now quite spread out as well, having to defend all of these. Okay. So now I attack the b3 pawn. Okay, check. Rook comes back, I grab the pawn. Okay. And I'm thinking, I have got this guy. He is my bitch. This is a walk-in from this point, and I'm starting to get happy and think, what a good video I'm going to be able to make this morning to cheer you guys all up and show you how good I am at chess. Okay, but wait. Okay, my h-pawn. Harry's only 2 steps away from glory. I grab a pawn. Boom. He grabs a pawn. I push my king. I push my rook. Okay. Now, obviously check. I have to step out the way. Check again. Step out the way. He looks at my pawn. Now, for some reason, so I'm 2 pawns up. Sorry, I'm a pawn up. Okay. This guy's 1 step away from promotion. So white's rook is now tied to the h-file. What I should be doing probably here is move my king, get this pawn ready, and get 2 pawns ready to promote, okay? For some reason, with 21 minutes, 52 seconds left on the clock, I get it into my head that my rook can come here and defend this square without undefending that pawn. What on earth was that? And then I decided to give check. All right, fair enough. Okay, lose a pawn. And now blunder 2. I've made only 2 blunders in this game, and you've just seen this is the second one, right? What's wrong with this? It's lining myself up for a skewer. Okay, I should have played that, probably. Okay, played that, and I resign. Okay. Totally threw it away. I mean, I threw it away twice, really, this game. I think my opponent played really badly here. Those 2 moves, boom, I've got, his pants are down, he's over a barrel. I mean, really, this is terrible. You know, I've got such a lead in development. And then this move was just awful. He should have taken opportunity to castle, completely loses it then. I'm thinking this guy's an absolute muppet, and I'm just going to have fun wiping the floor with him, right? Doesn't happen. Don't get happy. I got happy, right? Knight comes in. Yeah, what's that, you know? And here, very comfortable. Pushing my pawns in the middle. Everything's good. Yeah, I drop a pawn. But, you know, here I do have... I mean, I looked for ideas of how can I move with a discovered check, but there's nothing really that appealing to grab. I guess actually one idea could have been here and then knight in there. That could have been good. Yeah, I missed that one. So there, but then knight here, bishop blocks maybe. So that maybe didn't work, but still totally on top. And then allowing this, I think, was my other big mistake. I should have simply dropped the queen back, centralised my other rook, and just use this extra mobility and dynamism that I've got in the game to bulldoze my opponent. My knight's ready to come in here, protected by a pawn. What a great square for my knight. Yeah? Then to there. It's just, you know, it's all there. I just rushed. So what did I play? 15 seconds, 3 seconds, 13 seconds, 12 seconds. I'm playing in seconds, right? I've used less than 3 minutes to get to this completely dominant position. So what's the lesson in all of this? You've got to keep the same mentality from the start of the game right through to the end. That's it. Why am I playing a 30-minute game? Yeah. And losing with, what's left on the clock at the end of here? 21 minutes. I might as well have played a 10-minute rapid game than a 30-minute rapid game. If I'm gonna rush like that and play stupid moves like this that I haven't thought through, what's the point? So what have you got to do? You've got to keep that same steely mentality. It's okay to think, I've got this, right? This guy is at my mercy. It's okay to think those thoughts if you think them combined with, okay, so what I've got to do now is I've got to double down on my evil, right? I've got to be clinical. I've got to finish this guy off in the most diabolical way I can, right? Rather than thinking, oh, now it's a walk-in. Now I can just skip over the line, right? It doesn't happen. Okay, painful lesson for me. I hope it's a useful lesson for you. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, share, comment. I'm sure you've had plenty of games like this as well. I'm sure we'll all have plenty more to come. Yeah, it sucks, but the important thing is, does the lesson go in? All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.